but we can go wherever you guys want to.
So when is the Health and Wellness Center, or what's the ETA, when that's supposed to be?
Yeah, so this year, this calendar year 23, we'll go through approvals, architects, design, just all the development. Anticipate to break ground later this year, call it winter of 23, basically be under construction for 20. So think 23 approvals, design, 24, calendar year 24 construction. So really 2 years or less is when we want to be in it.
Is it
We'll break ground.
I'm sorry, is it tearing down the current building there?
No, so it's going to be so McFadden, Jervy Gym, and then south of Jervy Gym, it's grass open. We park. It will affect
the parking, where the parking
going down into the parking where your dumpster is, Matt. Yeah, so it's just a new build on top of, or out in the area. So it's certainly some parking management that we'll go through. But this project will include interior renovation of Jervy Gym for volleyball. Raising the roof. You guys have been to volleyball games, and it's not regulation height, so new roof replacement, essentially ceiling roof replacement, and then some light renovation in Jervy basement, where this for volleyball and gymnastics. So I'm sorry, volleyball and track. So light renovate. There's no demo coming down. This is a new build, a 50,000 square foot building, but also included in this project, Jervy Gym renovation and some light renovation in Jervy basement.
Well, this will be like a new home sort of for the volleyball track teams.
All Olympic sports. I mean, think again, Jervy Center, which I know it was built in 1972, and at the time it was for all sports, and I know football was there. But right now, Jervy is basically home from a performance and wellness, right strength and conditioning, sports medicine, for all sports except football, which they're obviously housed mostly fully at Reeves, and men's and women's basketball, which have a lot of their units at Little John and Swan. So all 18 other sports basically are in Jervy day to day, or at least week to week. And so over the past year, we've looked at renovation and expansion of Jervy, and we got to the point where, because it's 50 years old, you get systems and HVAC, that it just became more bang for the buck and a best outcome of build new. So it's basically the new Jervy, and again, a different name, and Jervy's not going anywhere, but it's the extension of those programs for all Olympic sports.
You mentioned basketball. It's just what you kind of think of the season they're having so far, and then the net rankings have been a big topic.
Golly, I know.
What's kind of your take on how that's configured?
I know Brad's talked on it a bunch too. I certainly don't have any more rigor or analytics related to net. Certainly well aware of our resume. We've had a couple losses that to teams that aren't highly ranked, and I know the ACC isn't as highly ranked as it's been in the past. We obviously have some sure enough games coming up starting tomorrow. So but as Brad said, right, the assumption in my discussions with other colleagues and selection committee folks, it's that is a tool, not the tool, and I think the rest of our resume, little like you watch us play, just feel like we're ranked in the top 20 or ranked 20th right now. So there's eight games left to play, let alone ACC tournament. So there's still a lot of season left to play as a positions from an NCAA tournament. But just couldn't be more proud of where they're at. And Brad, and obviously the roster and leadership, and the guys coming back, Hunter, certainly, and then how Chase is transformed, and PJ, and that was a big part of the decision and the discussions that Brad and I had in the offseason of the expectations and anticipations for this year. No doubt, and Hunter, you could just feel how the team would come together. Now, did I anticipate it would be this successful, so to speak, or number one at top of the ACC in February? I don't know that you had that level of specific anticipation, but just felt that in discussions with Brad and investment, right, staff turnover and staff retention in some cases, that. And that's a lot of what I talked about. It was my job from an administrative standpoint is invest that meets that would match where the expectations are. And so there certainly has been that this offseason, which I think has certainly been part of the calculus, let alone just how they play. I'll take the opportunity just on hoops and continuing the investment notion. Nothing public here today, but we are working on and expect sometime this spring, perhaps as early as the next trustee meeting, which is April, for a phase one approval of an addition and expansion for Little John and Swan. additional practice facility build that would be for both men's and women's basketball, but continued investment there. And I know we talk about, well, what does investment mean? And yeah, that means staff and support staff, and we've seen some of that, and we'll continue to see that years ahead, and that means facilities too, and so we have a big project at hand that, again, we're in design process, but that'll come forward later this spring. Been supported by fundraising success. You guys saw in December we announced the biggest gift in athletics history, MT history, one of the biggest in university history. So that's a big part of my job, sure, but our coaches, Brad's a big part of that as well, and it leads to all the investment notion. It's all circular.
The new facility, that addition to, so would that be like adding, because of gymnastics, adding like an extra practice court, stuff like that?
Yeah, right, and it's not, gymnastics is certainly part of it, so gymnastics would start a year from now, and so right now our men's and women's program have basically full access of the main court, and that's where they probably primarily practice, and then Swan Pavilion practice gym, and so they work well together, and they effectively have two practice courts, and based on home games and travel and things like that, they manage that well. To your point, fast forward a year from now, you had gymnastics. We're building right now their practice facility, gymnastics practice facilities up is a women's sports expansion up by rowing with lacrosse and gymnastics. So they're going to practice up there, but they'll have their gymnastics meets in Littlejohn. So there'll be more impact on the main floor, which right now is a main practice court for basketball. So yes, adding gymnastics will affect basketballs, and so this is part of that. In addition to just, hey, what's next? What's a next needed facility for men's and women's basketball? So not only, yes, an additional practice facility, so it basically have men's and women's practice facilities for themselves. Also, basically dining nutrition area. Think like Paul Bistro that you guys have been in for down in Reeves, so that, right, specifically for men's and women's basketball programs, and then some expansion of recruiting areas and offices and things like that for both men's and women. So yeah, it's kind of all part of the calculus of how that new facilities come together.
Any changes as far as like seating in Littlejohn, or is all that?
Yeah, no, this would all just be kind of ops and for the teams, nothing in bowl.
And going with that, being that the team is having the year they're having, perfect timing to kind of put that out there.
Oh man, no question. With the excitement with it, and again, there's a lot of fundraising and donor support momentum to it. Big part of it, of course, big part of my job. And then you get into, we're not holding it to April for any necessary timing reason, other than we have some design work that we're still working on. That'll be the next trustee meeting that we hope to have their approval on. And it coincides with the end of basketball season. It's just kind of the timing lines up, let alone the success of the team this year.
A two-part question, going back to Matt's question about net, and I know Clemson has some bad losses going to the quadrant system, but you are ranked, you're first in the ACC here in February, yet you're in the low 60s in the net. Like, do you think there needs to be a revamp of the formula, one, and then two, how much are athletic directors or administrators sort of brought in on that subject? Talking about net rankings and things like that.
Right. It's interesting. I've certainly had a lot of dialogue with colleagues on it. We talk about it as ACC ADs. We've talked on it a time or two, and I've talked with some folks to understand it more. Not at the point, and I don't know that it needs to be revamped. But I think there are curious examples. I think Clemson's one. We're not the only one. That there's other, I know a lot of the national kind of hoops writers have, bring up, gosh, well, this doesn't make sense, or you had this win, but you dropped, right? So I think we're a test case of it, but we're not the only one. So I think the national narrative of, gosh, net, and what's the use, and how does it work? I think it's certainly got more awareness this year. But that's the thing. When you tie it back to postseason selection, NCAA selection, right? 3 years ago, we were ranked 35th in the net and weren't selected at large. And NC State that year was 34th, right? Neither of us were at large. So it gets back to, okay, it's one thing, whatever the calculus is of it, and does that need to be revamped? A lot of probably thought on that. But at the end of the day, if it's just one tool, along with KPI, Kevin Pauga is a buddy of mine who developed the KPI metric, which is one of the metrics that the committee looks at, certainly RPI, and then you get into the strength of schedules and non-conference schedules and things like that. So all the metrics that come in, that's one of those, but in whether it needs revamping or not, So long as it's just one of them, not the one, I think that's kind of where it sits. And that's my lens of recognizing the evaluation of it, maybe not the equation of it.
With Easton and Reed getting raises, I think everyone else say the same. Was that other people coming after them? Was that strictly performance based? What kind of went into that?
Little both. I don't have, not to intimate that there were specific opportunities for them. I think there certainly have been in the past, and I think there's that always exists for any of our coaches, but particularly those two because of the performance. And so you get the performance and just the development on the field with their position groups. Sure, the recruiting aspect, and I know there's a lot of momentum with that, and within the program, let alone how Nick and Mike do that. And then you get to the retention, right? And a lot of the seniors or super seniors that came back are, Easton and Reed are a big part of why they came back, for development and another year of experience with them. So if you think through the guys that have came back between Rook and Tyler, Xavier Thomas, I mean, their time with Lemansky and Easton, big part of that, and then Sheridan and Jalen with Easton or with Reed, a big part of that as well.
So from a basketball perspective, is there anything else administratively you feel like Brad and even Amanda and their programs need to become more regular tournament teams?
Right. Certainly, and you said it, Davis, to think through, both collectively and how we invest in resource and expect from men's and women's basketball. Obviously, they're different programs, they have different history and traditions, but do view them to be, want to continue to invest in both. This facility piece, again, that's to come, and I'm glad I was able to talk on some of it here. That's a big part of it. Obviously, the $63 million investment in Littlejohn and Swan in 2016 was a huge step forward from a facility standpoint. From time to time when I walk past Jervey, when I came here in 2013, basketball programs were over in Jervey, and I distinctly remember going to Saturday football games where there's big official visit or recruiting weekends, and both men's and women's basketball programs are on the corner patios of Littlejohn. It just felt so mid-major, quite frankly. And so that $63 million investment for Swan and Littlejohn, that's a first-class ACC caliber facility. So now we've been in it 5 or 6 years, great. And it's been awesome in venue and ops and program. But like we have done with football and a lot of our programs, like the continual investment is that. And so what this facility coming ahead is part of that. So to answer your question, Davis, yes, continue facility investment, part of it. Continue staff investment. And again, I know at least with men's basketball had some staff changes and certainly made resources available to Brad to go. He hired a sitting D1 head coach, Billy Donlin, huge part of the equation this offseason. I think Sean Dixon is a star, and to recruit him. And so in multi-year contracts, there are multi-year contracts. That was the first. So you get that piece. And again, there was some retention. Strength coach had some opportunities to leave, another support staff member. So you get the retention that maybe doesn't have the external optics of it, but those really matter from a day-to-day of the program, right? And the cohesion with the staff and support staff and the players. And so those are certainly two things. Davis, I don't. There isn't maybe another thing that's top of mind of, hey, we need to do this for hoops, because how we travel, how we make available dollars for scheduling and buy games and guarantee games and things like that. We are all in on that level of investment for hoops, and again, I think we're seeing some results of that.
It seems like from an athletics department standpoint, one of the strategies has been NIL and kind of being more open with that and ads and that kind of stuff, and Dabo talking in games and Brownell doing the same. What was kind of the conversations like to do that? How do you feel like that's going?
Yeah, and you'll see the same in baseball and softball when we tip off and or first pitch this spring. And so it's been over 18 months now from when NIL became changed from an NCAA standpoint. We did have a concerted maybe shift of mentality or maybe shift of assertiveness in the fall, and you saw that with videos and things like that. How we work with our collectives, Tiger Impact is really, really important. Darryl Clemson is really, really important. I couldn't be more pleased with how those two collectives work together, quite frankly. That's not the case everywhere, I can tell you. And so within our community, with the two collectives that have different lenses and roles, and how they work with each other, and how they work with us and we work with them to support and help fundraising and compliance and education, and then ultimately how the collectives interface with the student athletes. I feel really good about where we sit departmentally, where our coaches are. Coach Sweeney, sure, it's easy to start there, but the rest of our coaches of where NIL fits for our student athletes, right? And I know we heard from Coach a lot the last couple of days that, and he said it, no one's chose to come to Clemson because of NIL, but we want to make sure that we are really invested there, and that's available, that's part of it. And so, I think I know I've talked about it a lot for the past year as far as being bold and aggressive with that. I know I'm a younger guy and probably, think that way on a lot of different things. And I think we've had a really measured and, appropriate position from an NIL standpoint, but that's going to keep going. So we're going to keep, turning the spigot, so to speak, play with integrity, playing by the rules, no question. Like that's without question. But I think the external prominence of that's going to continue to show itself.
How do you balance that with the fact that you have IPTAY over here, which is your, fundraiser and it brings you scholarship money?
Yeah.
And you got the same people that they're going to. The collectives are going to the same
Right.
people. How do you balance that to make sure you're getting what you need on both ends?
It's not easy. Will, you're hitting right on it. It comes down to relationships. So my time with Davis and IPTAY board is significant on education of NIL, where it fits, how I think we should have attacked at Clemson, and it's at the end of the day, you're right. It's kind of one community, one audience by and large. That's it. In talking with colleagues, there's significant, much more significant issues of that alignment around the country than what we have. And we don't have issues with it. We just got to keep talking about it, keep adapting, and keep asking keep educating our donors, because there's still a lot of uncertainty. And it's easy for me because I feel like I am in it day to day, and I feel like I know all the mechanics of what NIL isn't how it works. I need to. That's my job. But we have to continue to remind ourselves. Staff talks about, for our donors, it's still, a lot of times it's NIL and it's uncertain, and can't IPTAY pay for that? Well, no, IPTAY can't, do that. So we need you to continue your IPTAY support and consider supporting these collectives. So the educational side of things just needs to continually be iterated, and this goes up to the institution. President Clements, who you all know well of what type of recruiter he is and how he's engaged athletically from a recruitment standpoint and a fundraising standpoint, and his understanding, support, his consistency of messaging with our donors that he and I and IPTAY need to have of where NIL fits, how it works, where we need you. That's not just the work of the institutional message on that is what we talk a lot about. So it's not easy with IPTAY. We certainly have commitments in increasing scholarships, new sports, facilities that we're moving forward, fundraising, major gifts, like all the things. This is just another menu item that we asked for, and the alignment that we have is really important of how that works.
Could you use the Prowl and Growl as kind of a way to educate?
Big time. Anticipate as we get into Prowl and Growl in April, really May and June. Have a lot of prominence with our collectives and with messaging from myself, coaches that'll be there. To continue to grassroots the message and support, which is who and what Clemson is and